Well, of course, eventually he found out I was leaving for Belgium, and he told me that I had a lot of chutzpah not to have told him when I applied for the job, that after he told me everything here, I was leaving him. So I answered him that where I learned to have chutzpah was in this country, which is true. One develops a lot of character in Israel. And without any chutzpah, without any strong will, one really doesn't get anywhere. Not that I got anywhere, actually, in Israel, but one just had to have chutzpah in order to survive. And that's why that bit in Jaffa, Edith and I selling all clothes. And that's why entering the beauty con and another little other events here and there where I had to use all the guts I had in order to survive. So he finally wished me good luck and goodbye. And the last 3 weeks before I left, I stopped working because there were a lot of preparations and a lot of office running from one office to another. And as I said before, the Israeli government didn't give me a hard time. Besides, they were sure I was going to come back. I had signed something that I was going to come back. There wouldn't be any problem. But I'm sure that they realized that a lot of young people, especially the ones who were not born there, many had gone back to Europe. And many did come back eventually to Israel, but many also remained in Europe, or they came to this country. So they weren't really too hard on anyone, and especially if you did your duty and you served 2 years in the army, they were perfectly satisfied. It's getting toward the end of my time in Israel. It was by then already October 53, and I had lived there exactly 4.5 years. I'm trying to remember what else happened in that period of time, but if anything will come up later, I'll go back to it. I can't think of anything of great importance that happened. So this era, this time period of Israel is over. I will just say that my uncle and aunt are the ones who took me to Haifa, to the port, and it was goodbyes again. And God, I've gone through goodbyes so many times at train stations, at boats, at ports, so many times in my life. I remember crying again. It was my choice, my decision to go back to Belgium to see what would happen there. Yet a big chunk of my life was in Israel, my teen years really, from 15 and a half to 20. And those are very crucial years. And obviously there was some kind of failure somewhere along the line that I could not remain. I mean, to speak the language fluently, to have spent 2 years in the army, to have been in love with this soldier, with Matka, whom I really loved, but obviously not enough to have remained. Somewhere something went wrong, otherwise I should have never gone back to Belgium. I should have, that's really where it was all at, Israel. That's where I should have stayed. I mean, where was I really going back to? What was I going back to? And all that had occurred to me in that 1 second of saying goodbye to my uncle and aunt. And the two of us were crying and hugging each other. But there was no returning. It was just all too late. The choice was made. The decision was made. There was no turning back. But I do remember at that moment thinking about the day I had arrived and why I left the horrible environment to begin with, why I left it, and why now was I going back to that. I don't know. I don't know. Only an analyst could figure that out. In fact, I might bring that up with Nora next week when I see her. It would be very interesting because there was absolutely no reason in the world for me to go back. None whatsoever. My future was Israel. And even if I wasn't sure about Matkem, if I wasn't sure about our lives together as a future, I still should have remained in Israel. He was so good and so kind, and we got along so well, physically, in every way. We really got along. It was just myself. I wasn't at peace yet with myself, and I saw that maybe happiness was somewhere else. Oh boy, was I wrong. That was one of the bad decisions. There's been so many, but that was one of the biggies. There's no question that I should have remained in Israel and tried to make the best of it. And my life would have been much less complicated. Because at that age, at 20, instead of being at peace finally with myself and really knowing where I wasn't anywhere. I was worse off than ever before. I never should have returned to Belgium. I was so mixed up inside. I just didn't know what the hell I wanted. There's no point in going back in regretting. The decision was made. There's no point of return. I could not reverse the decision. It was too late. So my uncle and aunt and I all three cried and said goodbye. I was not to see them again for 16 years, because I left October 53 and July 1969 was the very first time I finally went back for a visit to Israel. So 16 years had gone by. I came back to visit for 3 weeks when I was 36. And that was 5 years ago. And a hell of a lot has happened since then. A hell of a lot. So that was the end of an era. During the 5 years that I had spent in Israel, almost 5 years, my mother and Maurice's life had changed a little as far as the business end of it. He did not have the glove factory anymore, and she did not sell scarves anymore. They had first of all moved to a small town named Nivelles, which is about 1 hour by car from Brussels. They had opened a small retail store, a men's retail store, sporting clothes, sporting clothes for men, a small retail store. And they were both in the store, and that's what they were doing, selling. And once or twice a week, he would go back to Brussels, back and forth, and buy more suits, more jackets, more pants. And that's where they were at when I decided to come back. So it wasn't going to be anymore the beautiful, gorgeous apartment that she owned that she rented in Brussels. It was a small town, Nivelles, a real hick town, a real nothing town. I didn't know any of that, of course. I knew there was a change of address. They had told me about it, but I didn't know how bad, how tiny, and how villagey it was, and how also there were very, very few Jews in that town. It was mostly Gentiles, Catholics, I don't know. The only way to get to Brussels was by train. And anyway, on the boat, going back to Belgium, that same month, in October, they had the Olympics in Israel. So the boat was full, there were so many young women and men, young athletes from the Olympics who were on their way home, back to Europe, at different places. And on the boat I met a charming young man from Vienna. And he didn't speak any Hebrew, but he knew French. I know that's what we spoke, because I certainly didn't know any English then, and I didn't know Jay. He did speak French, and he was absolutely gorgeous. He was so handsome. And the boat this time was only 10 days, and it was a much nicer boat. It was also I had a cabin I shared with another woman. I mean, the facilities were much nicer than my first experience with the ship when I came to Israel. Him and I were attracted to each other instantly. And instead of him spending a lot of time with all his peers and his Olympic friends, all these athletes, he spent the time with me constantly. We managed somehow to eat at the same table. The dining room, where they put you is where you're stuck with the rest of the voyage. The 3 meals a day is where you have to be at. And his table was right next to mine, and he took someone into switching with me, and I sat with him. And those 10 days were fantastic. We had such a hot love affair on that boat. It was unbelievable. But the trouble, I enjoyed myself thoroughly. He was fantastic. He was really great. The only trouble was he fell in love, and he called it, I don't know, he called it instant love, or there's another word, I cannot think of it. He fell desperately in love, and he said that after he goes back to Vienna, he's going to come to Belgium and get me, and then we'll get married in Vienna. I had so many proposals around that time. It was unbelievable. The point was that, again, I didn't know where I was. I wasn't interested in marriage. And I kept telling him that after I arrive in Belgium, I have no plans on seeing him or writing to him, that these are 10 beautiful days away from it all, in the middle of the ocean, and that we should just enjoy ourselves and make the most of it without thinking always about the future. I didn't see any future in anything. I didn't know where I was even going. How could I plan on a... The thing was that he was completely taken with me. He fell head over heel over me. So I went along with the gag that yes, he can come and visit and this and that, but I remember giving him a wrong address. I gave him an address in Brussels that I didn't even know. I remember a street called that way, and I gave him a number. And there was no way of him knowing. I mean, no way of him finding me. But those 10 days were really fantastic. I can't remember his name. I was just thinking about it. I cannot remember. Anyway, from the boat that arrived in Marseille, I had to take a train to Paris, and then from Paris to Brussels. And I had sent a cable what exact time I would arrive at Brussels. As I got closer, in Marseille, there was a train which I didn't have to wait for. It was very simple. But in Paris, I had to wait 3 hours. So I walked around a while, and I was trying to see if I could remember from the time I was a kid during World War II, but everything I had forgotten. I couldn't recognize anything, except the main station. But then one train station very often looks like another. So, but when I finally got on the train from Paris to Brussels, that's when I started to shake. That's when it really hit me what I was doing, where I was going back to. It hit me like a bomb, and I got so scared. I had such butterflies inside. I thought I was going to die. I was nervous. I was afraid. I can't describe the feelings, but for the very first time, it hit me what was happening. I was able, in the last year or so, to dismiss Maurice. I was able to, on a conscious level anyway, I was able to dismiss him. But it just hit me that I was going to see him again, and how am I going to, last time he had seen me I was 16 and a half, and now I'm 20. And I did develop more. I did become a little taller. I mean, I was a young lady. I was 20, almost 20 and a half. And then I'm saying to myself, oh my God, how am I going to look at my mother? How am I going to face her? I mean, what about all that guilt? How's it going to work out? Why am I coming? All these thoughts went through my head. I must have been crazy to have left his life. And then I remembered Willie, that little brat. If I was 20, that means he must have been